Start with our today's session. Our today's session is going to be taken by Advocate Pooja Anand, and the topic is matrimonial law and litigation, what every law student should know. So, before starting with the session, I'll just start with a brief introduction of our today's speaker. Our today's speaker is Advocate Pooja Anand. She is a seasoned legal professional with nearly 3 decades of experience in matrimonial law, criminal law, arbitration, mediation, and dispute resolution, with extensive experience across India and Canada. Over the past 16 years, she has focused significantly on mediation, dispute resolution, and legal aid, particularly for women and disadvantaged communities. Her legal work has been recognized in several judgments of the Supreme Court of India and the Delhi High Court. A strong advocate of ADR, she has trained several advocates across India in mediation, negotiation, legal advocacy, and professional skills, and also has served as a judge at several moot court competitions. She has extensive experience in ODR, having acted as a mediator and conciliator in numerous matters. Her international training and accreditations include Pepperdine University, Dallas University, ADR ODR UK, CMC IMI, and SIMI. Her professional journey reflects her vision of evolving ADR from alternative dispute resolution to appropriate dispute resolution with the focus on making justice more accessible, equitable, and effective. So, without further ado, we will start with the session now. Ma'am, you can start with the session.
Good evening to Dhruv. Thank you for having me here, and thank you to all the participants here. I will just say that it's my proud privilege to be speaking to you, and it's a very important and involving subject, family laws in India. So I welcome all the students, the faculty members, and the participants all together. All that I wanted to know was, Dhruv, do you want my camera on or off? I'm comfortable with both.
Ma'am, it will be great if you can keep it on, if that's possible.
No, because everybody has it almost off. So I thought if it's like, everybody is comfortable that way, then I can also do it on.
Ma'am, either of it works, whatever is comfortable with you.
All right, I'll keep it on. Just give me a moment.
Yes.
The evening being at home has got its own limitations. So anyways, so let's start with the topic for the day. It's family laws in India. So I always say that family laws in India are more about balancing tradition, the constitutional values, and also it incorporates social justice in a way that this particular subject is not like any other law. See, family laws in India are they govern most intimate of human relations, whether it's marriage, divorce, maintenance, adoption, guardianship, inheritance, and the new evolving subjects which came into place to take care of any kind of a domestic violence in any relationship. And domestic violence in India is not only for wife towards a estranged husband or in-laws, it can be used by any, just like divorce is only pertaining to a husband-wife relationship. Domestic violence can be for any woman in a household relationship, whether be she sister, mother, wife, anybody, right? So India is one unique country which is like the family law is governed by personal laws which are based on religion. They are also simultaneously guided by the constitutional principles of equality, dignity, liberty, and justice. So it is an amalgamation of family law, which is a very delicate balance between the religion, the custom which governs them, constitutional morality, judicial interpretation. So today, as I understand in my 31 years of practice, there has been an evolution of family law. There has been like judgments which have been part of the constitutional framework, the Supreme Court judgments, which have paved way for further interpretation and also evolution of the laws. Now, as we go further, I will also later on at the end of my whatever I have to say, I'll give you a few citations which you can note. There was no time for me to make a PPT. And anyways, I am against the concept of PPT. People stop hearing, they click a picture, and I'm sorted. I don't have to listen to her. I like when I'm asked questions because you, as young students who have to enter into the mainstream practice, uh, your questions make me also learn something new. So I like a very interactive session instead of just giving you PPTs and it's so mechanical. And in fact, you'll make better PPTs than me between you and me because AI, you are better charged with that. So I will just take you now I'll just make it into a bracket so that we can understand it better. So we'll first start with how the family law came into being, the evolution, I would say, as my first part of this conversation, which I'll be having. I don't call it a lecture because you don't need lectures. I would feel better if we converse. So, historically, I would say that family relationships in India were always governed by customs, traditions, religious texts. So, post independence, Parliament initiated major reforms. The important legislations at that time included the Hindu Marriage Act, the Hindu Succession Act, the Hindu Minorities and Guardianship Act, the Hindu Adoption and Maintenance Act. They all came into place subsequent to the independence era. Special Marriages Act, which is as late as 1954, Indian Divorce Act, the Muslim Protection of Rights on Marriage Act in 2019, because earlier on merely by saying triple talaq, the Muslim woman was thrown out of the house. So all these acts have evolved, and these have evolved and have, in a way, paved way for where we are today. There is this Protection of Women from Domestic Violence Act, which I had mentioned earlier, which takes care of all women in a domestic relationship, not necessarily wife. So then, besides that, there is like the Juvenile Justice Care and Protection of Children Act, wherein children who are minor have to be handled not in the other courts, but there is a special juvenile court where there is care and protection of children, which has been introduced. So judiciary has also been a very, very interactive and has played a very transformative role by interpreting the family law in light of the constitutional values. So when we talk of constitutional values, let me take you to that background. I would just divide my this part of the lecture series into a second part of what is the constitutional perspective qua family law, whether family law can be understood dehorse the constitution. So it is very important that we understand that Article 14 of the Constitution of India, which as law students you would have read by now. I mean, there are there are some rights and there are some duties. Fundamental rights include Article 14, which is equality before law. So whether it's a husband or wife, they are equal. They are on the same parameter in the eyes of law. Then there is Article 15, which prohibits discrimination on grounds of religion, caste, sex, or place of birth. Likewise, there is Article 21, which takes care of protection of life and personal liberty. So the Supreme Court has included right to dignity, right to privacy, right to marry, right to choose one's partner. All these are part and parcel which are governed and taken care of by the Constitution of India. Article 25 takes care of freedom of religion. If there is an intercaste marriage, there is no more a compulsion to marry or to change your religion before marriage. You can always get married under the Special Marriages Act. So all those things have evolved the laws which were there. So far, the Uniform Civil Code has not been adopted by other states. It has come into place in the state of Uttarakhand. So there was a lot of Uniform Civil Code conversation going on that it should bring into place to bring all the states and all the religions under one umbrella. but there have been many dissenting views, and there's been a lot of agitation against bringing into being a uniform civil code. So as of now, only the state of Uttarakhand is using it. I would say that the difference, which why uniform civil code was thought as important, is that under the Hindu law, which is governed by the Hindu religion, where Sikhs, Jains, Buddhists, they're all part and parcel of the Hindu Marriage Act. So they are governed by the Hindu Marriage Act. So under that, marriage is a sacrament so far as certain traditions are concerned. It is not a contract which is there in the under the Muslim law. They have the system of dower. It's a contract. It is not a sacrament. Under the Hindu law, there is sapinda and prohibited relationships are there. Whereas under the Muslim personal law, they get married even into their first cousin's family. So there is a very clear-cut demarcation in both the religion practices. Nothing is wrong or right. We are not here to decide that. But the under the HMA, marriage is a sacrament. Saptapadi is a very important part of the Saptapadis, the seven circles around the sacred fire, are part and parcel. And even in the Sikh religion, they take the, though not around the fire, but they take the round the religious book. So all these make marriage a sacrament. Under the Muslim law, there is a system of meher dower, where the girl gets into a contract that she is willing to marry this person. And so there is that in case of any dispute, she will get this as meher, which is the dower, right? There are basic conditions under the Hindu Marriage Act that the groom has to be 21, the bride has to be 18, it has to be a free consent, as I said, no prohibited or sapinda unless permitted by custom. Hindu marriage also takes care of marriages wherein, supposing the groom is already married, it's a bigamy, so it is a void marriage. You cannot get married, or for other reasons like the marriage is by force, a girl is like, or a man is abducted. There was some movies also which are must have seen. Bollywood takes the first step ahead. In Bihar, the grooms were literally abducted and the marriage was done. So all these marriages by fraud or force are voidable marriage. So therefore, various sections of Hindu law, starting from HMA, Section 5, Section 11, the judicial separation, Section 12, and 13, which takes care of marriage by mutual consent divorce. So all these things are there. Even if the girl is pregnant prior to her marriage with another man, then that person has got married to the second husband by means of fraud or in not informing him. So all these are voidable. They have to be challenged, and then you can, within 1 year of marriage, say these are voidable marriages. Special Marriages Act, which came into being subsequent to the independence, which was in 1954, is a law which is a secular law. It is applicable to all irrespective of religion. So if you decide that, yes, I want to get my marriage registered under the Special Marriages Act, then it takes care of the civil marriage, the registration, and the interfaith marriages. This act primarily promotes the constitutional secularism, because the first line of the Constitution of India is "We, the people of India." So you go on, is a secular republic and all that thing, which you would have read in the Constitution Act. So the Special Marriage Act is one of the basic act which promotes constitutional secularism. So if two people decide that whatever be our religion, we want to get married, they can get their marriage registered under the Special Marriages Act. You go, there is a form, you fill up, and then there is like a notification which is put up over there. If there is anybody who has an opposition to the same, then they can come and say that no, they cannot get married. And it might be a formality, but then you have to go through it. Under the Muslim Marriage Act, nikah, which is called the nikah, as I said earlier, it's a contractual marriage. So there is a proposal, there is an acceptance, and then the Maulvi asks you 3 times, are you willing to marry? Are you competent? Are you accepting the dower which is being offered to you? So all these things have taken care of the Muslim Marriage Act. As I said earlier, the divorce and judicial separation are part and parcel of the same acts under which you get married. If you get married under Special Marriages Act, you get divorced under Special Marriages Act. Likewise, supposing you want a judicial separation or divorce under the Hindu Marriage Act, since you're Hindu and you have got married. So in that scenario, the divorce and the judicial separation is done under the Hindu Marriage Act. So law has provided in all the acts mechanisms for dissolution of marriage. So you are being protected also, and your dignity is taken care of. You do not have to bother as to how you have to, in case of some estrangement between a couple. So the dissolution mechanism are in the same law by which you got married. And if you are Hindu, you have not registered your marriage, then even otherwise you'll be governed by the Hindu Marriage Act. Though you can take care of Special Marriages Act, but then you have to get it registered under. Maybe you get as per the norms which are happening in our society, you get married in that ceremony. But later on, you can get your marriage registered even under Special Marriages Act. There is no bar. So that is why specific acts, specific mechanism. Are we good so far? Okay. Since all of you are, most of you, okay, I see a lot of thumbs up coming my way. All right. So there is the most, which I would say the evolution of the matrimonial laws would have come into place. People have become wiser. I can tell you with my practice that I have yet to have argued a case and seen the outcome in the court of law. It's like an impossibility, minimum 10 to 12 years at the district court level, followed by appeal, counter appeal. It's a long and lengthy process. Sometimes it takes 18 to 20 years. If there are children, they become major, they get married, and the parents are still fighting for divorce. So now with the changing pace, changing lifestyles, and people becoming more, I would say, they're not opposed anymore. They're more open to understanding that two people, if they're not able to make the marriage work, there is no need to be spiteful. There is no reason to be going loggerheads and having so much of acrimony against each other. So then there is also a provision under the laws for divorce by way of mutual consent. When you talk of divorce by mutual consent, it requires mutual agreement. Whatever is like under the Hindu law, we have first motion, second motion, and then you can, after waiting for 1 month, you can get married. Now, mutual consent is the most decent way to part ways by an estranged couple. Why? Because you're not washing your dirty linen in public. There are no allegations by each other. It's a simplicity that the marriage has broken down irretrievably, and two people are not able to make it happen and make it work. So therefore, they want to preserve their sanity and they are deciding to part ways amicably, which is not challenged by the judges. They cannot question, no, I think you should go and try and live together. When you are fighting a contested divorce, the judge has the right to grant the divorce or to refuse the divorce. So you are putting your life, your future into the hands of a third party who doesn't know either of the parties, who's only going to go by evidence on paper. You have to prove your innocence. You talk of the past. But under the mutual consent divorce, there is no question answered. The parties just say we are not able to make the marriage work. We wish to part ways amicably, and you are granted the divorce. The 6 month cooling off period initially was there just to allow the couples to revisit their thoughts whether they wish to divorce or whether they can still consider. But considering that that cooling off period of 6 months was only adding to the pain of the parties, Supreme Court has now permitted that the parties can waive it off by giving reasons. But in the separation period, there has to be a 18-month of time period wherein the parties have stayed separately. So that time is given so that parties are not in a rush, like that. Okay, I have to break off. No, try and make it work. And if it's really not working out, then you go for mutual consent. So there, I would say that the mediation, which has come into place in India, mediation has really helped the parties to uh, amicably sort out all the various disputes, whether it is whenever a matrimonial case is filed, we always, as lawyers, we always laugh. It comes as a package deal, wherein the parties, usually the girls who are, I'm not on whether the girls are right or wrong, I'm not on blame game of anybody, but usually the estranged girl also goes in and files a case under dowry demand and cruelty 498-406 under the IPC. So you can check the PNS, the corresponding sections, which I even today need to check before I say, because it's been like more than 34 years and I've learned IPC, and now to just come up and change, it's a little mental block. So 498-406 is what it is in the IPC. So you can check those. So it is a 498-406, then section 12, 18, 19 of the Domestic Violence Act, and 125 under CRPC. Again, you have to check the PNSS. 125 CRPC is what? So all these are filed just to ensure that she gets up, like where the husband is not taking care of her financially. There are children involved. So the wife is left with no other alternative but to seek maintenance. So all these are filed. But in mediation, at the first instance only, the matters are settled and all these disputes are taken care of. In fact, in the Delhi High Court, we also have a system of pre-litigation mediation, and we are seeing such a rise of matrimonial cases being referred to pre-litigation mediation. Why I say so? Because I started as a mediator in the Supreme Court of India and the Delhi High Court about 17 years. So as a 31 years of actively practicing lawyer, I have not seen so many matters being settled or the outcome of the cases seen. But as a mediator, whether it can be pan across India or even sometimes one of the parties is outside India, one is within India, various jurisdictions. But when they come to Supreme Court, the matters referred for mediation, the matters are settled. The parties are willing to close and resolve their disputes. So that is the beauty of mediation, which has really helped and again evolved the family law situation. When we talk of matrimonial laws, and as I was saying that 125 CRPC cases are filed for maintenance. If there is a divorce case pending, then under section 24, divorce is asked for. Maintenance is asked for. So maintenance is just a measure of social justice where there is a spouse who's dependent on usually the husband's income, or there is a child. They should not suffer destitution. But maintenance can also be sought by parents. It is not just the wives. If there are old parents, then the parents can also seek financial help from their children, whether they be daughters or sons. So I cannot actually remember the section. It is somewhere in 100 only under the BNSS. It is 125, of course, of the CRPC. So there are various other acts which take care of other people, just not the husband and wife, which is the Hindu Adoption and Maintenance Act. As I said, Protection of Women from Domestic Violence Act. All these are personal laws. Protection of Women from Domestic Violence Act can be adopted irrespective of the religion. It is not only pertaining to Hindu females, it is pertaining to any woman in a domestic relationship within India. Right? I will take up, Dineshji, the questions a little later. You can keep putting it in the chat box and I will take it up all together. Does it work? All right. Thank you. As I said, that the financial responsibilities are usually taken care of the father. Today, even the mother, sometimes both the spouses are working well, and in fact, the wife is earning more than the husband. Then, in that case, it is not only the father who has to take care of the children, but it is the capacity to earn, which takes care of who has to pay how much, who are the financial responsibilities. Fair enough. During the matrimonial disputes, the worst sufferers, I would say, are children. Because children, it's sad, but then sometimes they are used by the estranged couple as a trophy. If the wife has custody, she refuses to make the father meet. If the father has custody, refuses. So child custody and guardianship are, very, very sad cases, I would say, in the context that children suffer. But the courts have ensured as guardians that the welfare of the child is paramount, and that is the principle which has been adopted. The emotional welfare, the educational, the safety, the health, all these have to be seen, not just the financial stability. Supposing there is a person who is earning 10 lakhs rupees a month, say the father, but the father is not available 28 days of the month, and he is wanting custody merely because he has financial stability. So he cannot just say that I need to have the custody of the child and leave the child with the staff. Maybe his parents don't say. Maybe he says, okay, I'll call my mother. But the mother will also, grandmother will say that, okay, I can just come for once a month or maybe for 2-3 days. But otherwise, if the father is out for 28 days, then in those cases, the court does take care that the child is with the mother and the father takes care of the child's financial needs. And whenever he wants visitation during that time, he is given. It has to be seen what is the situation. There is no demarcation clear cut. Each case has its own distinct value, whether there has to be a joint custody, whether the legal custody rests with the mother or the father. Geeta Sasidharan's case, if you will see, I'll just note it down later for you, took care. Earlier, the mother was not considered as a natural guardian. And after that case, the Supreme Court brought into place that even mother is a natural guardian of the child. So there, that distinct role of the mother, which was not given that due respect, was brought into place by the Supreme Court. And family courts are, these days, as I said, they have evolved. Mediation has also helped a lot. So family courts are also understanding it's not only the mother, but father can also equally take care of the child. Supposing there is a very high profile surgeon and she's a lady doctor and she's out of the house, she has no timings, maybe 18 hours into surgery. So there the father will be stepping into the role. Maybe he has a 9-to-5 job. So he'll be a better parent at taking care of the child rather than a mother who's into such a job where her timings are such bad that she cannot give appropriate time to the child during his developing years to come up as a better human being. So family courts are these days also encouraging co-parenting, wherever possible so that the child should not suffer just because the husband and wife cannot make it as a couple doesn't mean they are bad as parents. They can be very good as parents. And these days, I've seen couples, even as a mediator, I've observed in many of the cases that parties have separated, they've opted for co parenting. Either of the parent has moved to the vicinity where the one of the, for instance, the father is staying in an XYZ zone, the mother is moving to XYZ zone. 3 days the child is with one parent, 3 days with the other. And after their, the divorce and all is done, the anger has and the venting away has happened. They become friends and they've even gone for vacations together. So it is not that people are not evolving, people are also evolving. So we need to understand that what was the situation when we started with those laws, maybe 1950s. Usually all of them are 52, 54, 56. So they also need to undergo a sea change, if I were to say. But yes, with the Supreme Court judgments, it is happening. Then I would say that the guardianship and the adoption under Hindu law, it creates a complete, setup where the children can be adopted. There is a couple or a single parent who wants to adopt a child. Then how do we go about? So all these are part and parcel of the family law. The Juvenile Act enables adoption irrespective of religion, but it has to be through a statutory process. The objective is that the children are sent into right families. They are not misused. So there is a home survey done. There is a very in-depth study done of the couple or the home. They visit the home, they see, they study, they see the financial capability of the person who's wanting adoption. So adoption takes care of, humanitarian as well as legal purposes, for the purpose that children who are in shelter homes can be given a better life, a better home. As I said, laws have evolved, and we have earlier on also spoken about protection of women from domestic violence. This act came into being in 2005 only. It's one of the latest of the acts which have taken care of family law, and it expands legal protection beyond physical abuse. There is no reason that you have to go for medical legal cases, though, of course, laws are made, but they are sometimes misused also. So unfortunately, some people have misused this act also for their vested purposes. But the larger context has to be seen that whoever is the female, whether she is like, a sister, a mother, any relationship which is domestic in nature within the four walls of the same house, she is granted legal protection against physical, emotional, sexual, verbal, all kinds of abuses, including economic abuse, where maybe she's earning very well, but her salary is snatched from her. She's not respected enough. And all those things are taken care of under the Protection of Women from Domestic Violence. The reliefs under this act are not merely, they're not just for the sake of it. There is protection orders. Sometimes there is from the local police station, there is a lady protection officer appointed. If the wife is or any other female is thrown out of her residence, there can be residence orders of reinstatement. And the perpetrator of this kind of a situation is, just give me a moment, please. Sorry, as I said, Sunday and being at home has its limitations. Yeah. So as I said, there can be any kind of relief, including monetary, instant monetary relief. Maybe there is a lady with children and she's thrown out on the road. She's reinstated. Okay, she has a right to residence now. okay, there is a protection officer who comes daily to see her well-being. Or how does she live her life without money? So also monetary relief can be granted under Domestic Violence Act. So it is a violation of any kind of right of a woman who needs taken care of, who needs instant, protection by the courts. She just needs to go to the court and seek. But yes, again, as I say, it takes time. Even under the though 5 days and all those rules and laws are in place, but practically on account of so much of backlog of cases, it is impossible for the courts to do that. So it does take time, but then yes, the protection does come through. When we talk of various other laws, when you're talking of women, then under the Hindu Succession Act, daughters have got equal co-partnership rights in ancestral property, which was missing earlier, which is the amendment which came into being in 2005 only. So this reform has significantly the protection of women from domestic violence and the females in the family who had previously no co-partnership rights into the ancestral property. These are the, as I said, the laws have evolved. So this has actually given the gender equality, which was the right to equality under the Article 14 of the Constitution. Now it is seen. Women today enjoy, that enhanced right to inheritance. Earlier on, it was like, she's got married, she's gone to the other house, she's got no rights. But today, even if she's married, she has, and the succession continues. But of course, under the Muslim law, it's different from, because they are governed by personal laws. Under Hindu law, it is different. But yes, the laws are emerging. The recent trends have shown that there is a change which is happening, and they are continuously evolving by various Supreme Court judgments. Just for instance, like earlier on, live-in relationships had no value. It was like, you are in a relationship or you're not. It is your headache. There was nothing which was granted. But now with Supreme Court, there are various judgments wherein it depends on, as I said, each case has a different parameter. It is not like, a blanket thing that live-in relationship. Okay, at 2 days I stay, I was in a live-in relationship, so I need the rights. No, that is not how it is. So children who are born outside marriage, live-in relationship, surrogacy, all these are all very, very new and latest, I would say, the evolvement of the family laws. Then there are cases of IVF, which are assisted reproductive technology. All these have taken care of the various situations which arise because of these new, I would say, standards of living, the new technology emerging. So the laws are continuously evolving. Am I boring you all? I hope not. Anyways, so when we talk of Article 21, so there was this right of privacy, which was always considered as important when we are talking of live-in relationships. There was a time when live-in relationships were not given the respect they deserve, because it is the choice of two independent grown-up people who are major and who have a right to consent. A 15 or a 16-year-old girl, even if she were giving her consent, is not legally permitted. So legally, you have to follow, you have to be within the legal framework to give your consent. A consent which is like the parents have give, okay, there are parents and who say, okay, under the Hindu law, because under the Muslim personal law, 15 years is the age, but under Hindu law, it is 18. So say, for instance, there is a girl who is all of 16, 17, but she's a Hindu by religion. And even if the parents consent to the marriage, it is not a legal marriage. Even if they consent her to live with somebody, it is not. The man can be charged for kidnapping. And that is precisely what happens when young people, impressionable age, they start living together and the girl is not 18. Sometimes the parents only charge the man with kidnapping and rape. So it is something which we need to, awareness has to be there amongst the youngsters. Yes, you have a right to live your life the way you want to, but again, you have to understand that there are various embargoes, I would say, that you cannot go beyond the scope of law. Once you are within the ambit and scope of law, then you have the right to consent, whether you live in, whether you get married, whether you divorce. All that has to be within part and parcel of the legal framework. So I would say that family law is not just a collection of statutes, it is also a way of life which is governed and interspersed with various other laws which are in place to take care of the society's values, which are there to take care of preserving the dignity of family members, ensuring the equality of all, to promote justice. And as future, like, lawyers, I would say, and legal professionals, whether you go in as judges or academicians or anything, as first and foremost, as citizens of India, it is our responsibility, I would say, to interpret and apply those laws with that thing in mind, that we take care of the laws as a guideline to live our life, as a guideline, I would say, how to live the life under various sections and various laws and time being. And I see so many questions. Let me take up a few questions. If where are the chat box? Like, I can't see the chat box. Can somebody help me, Dhruv? Where is the chat box?
Ma'am, I have a question.
Yeah, I can see the chat box on my. I know it's on the right, but it's not showing on my screen.
Ma'am, we can start with the questions in the chat box and then we can take individual questions as well.
No, that's what I can't see those questions.
That
So,
box
Okay,
is
okay,
not
so
a subject.
So I'll just
all right,
repeat all
all
the
right,
questions.
all right. I see.
Ask a question directly one by one.
Sorry
Simply.
to interrupt, but ma'am, your voice is not clear. I can't hear. Oh, I'm so sorry, Sharik.
Ma'am, you're
Sorry.
audible. You're audible.
You couldn't hear me?
Ma'am, actually, your voice
Now,
was
Dinesh
audible.
has written a question. Maintenance condition for Hindu and Muslim kya hai? Who will be covered in this and duration? Thank you. BNS, as I said, section BNSS 125. I think it is 144 under the BNSS.
Yes.
Just check, please check. It's 125 under CRPC, I know for sure. But under BNSS, I think it is 144. If I'm not
144.
right. So both Hindu and, because that is a law which governs everybody who is a citizen of India. So BNS is for everyone. You don't have to bother about the personal laws. Maintenance can be for either Hindu or Muslim.
The Saira Bano case is a landmark judgment.
Shaira Bano's case is not only for maintenance. It is also for triple talaq. Earlier on, a man could just throw the woman out by shouting talaq, talaq, talaq. Or on the phone also, if she's at her mother's place, if that period over, you are divorced. Now you have to see that you give a notice. If it's a consent, then you both go and file a suit for declaration. If it's a contested, even then you file a suit for declaration by writing that I want to divorce you. So the law has changed subsequently. Of course, in 2019, it came back. Earlier on, even after the judgment, it was put in abeyance by the previous previously. So now it is coming to be. Rohit Tiwari ji, can a mother-in-law file a DV case against a daughter-in-law? Is it admissible? If you can suggest any law related to it. As I said, Rohit ji, protection of women from domestic violence is for any of the domestic relationship. If the mother-in-law is staying in the same house in where the daughter-in-law is residing, let's say that house belongs to the mother-in-law's husband, but that is the father-in-law. Then anyways, the mother-in-law has a right to file a case. If supposing it belongs to the son and she is living with her son, and the son has no objection, because sometimes might be that the son has an objection to against the mother filing a case, but then there is no bar and the mother-in-law can file a case of domestic violence against the daughter-in-law. The law is very clear. Please read section 12 of and read the interpretation in the beginning, section 2, 4, 6 of the protection of women from domestic violence. In the case where the marriage was extended only for 1 year, both husband and wife want a divorce, but wife is demanding a very high alimony and maintenance on allegations of impotency. How court shall look into this matter? Within 1 year of marriage, you can go in for annulment. You need not go for divorce. If there is a case or allegation of impotency, in that scenario, there will be a test of impotency against the husband. And if the husband is agreeing, then anyways, if the charges are not there, then the husband, of course, will deny. But sometimes if the charges are there, then the husband will simply sit there, agree, and then they can silently go in for an annulment. It depends, but of course, there has to be a medical certificate by a doctor of a government institute who informs whether the husband suffers from impotency or not. If Priya Pawar says if ancestral property is sold by the father and a new property is purchased using those funds, will the daughter have a legal share in the newly acquired property? For this, Priya Pawarji, please read the latest judgment of Supreme Court. The citation, I will check if I have it. I have few citations which I'll read out to you because even I cannot, just remember the pages and the year offhand. It'll be very foolish of me to say that I remember. I will read them out. But otherwise, if the ancestral property is sold, that means already that ancestral property has ceased to be. It becomes the father's property because the division has taken place. So then Supreme Court has come into play. There was a judgment which happened just about 6 months ago that property by right cannot be claimed by the children. Shashank Pawarji is saying, so if married man stays in relationship by preparing mutual bond with an adult woman, does it call bigamy or legally? I'm not understanding this question.
Shashank, maybe you can
Can
turn on your
can
mic and
you
explain
explain
it
to me
again.
what is it that you want to say? I'm not understanding.
I guess he's not there in the meeting. We can proceed ahead with other
I
questions.
think what he's trying to say is if a married man stays in relationship by preparing mutual bond with an adult woman, does it call bigamy? Of course it is bigamy. That means he's in a relationship outside marriage. See, earlier on, bigamy was a criminal offense. The criminality of the offense has been now removed by the Supreme Court. As I said, laws are evolving. Criminality has ceased to be. Now it is simply sit at a ground of divorce. So wife can always file for ground of divorce. The relationship with the wife, with the second woman, will not be legally valid, but children born out of any relationship are always legal. There are no illegal children. I can see you PT rights, but what's your name, please? Sorry? You're also Pooja? All right. With the double O? I got
Pooja,
it.
your mic is off. You can turn
My-
on your mic.
My mic is on.
No, ma'am, the other Pooja.
That's
The one
okay.
who's asking the question.
I could understand with her sign language what she's trying to say. She's Pooja
It's
with a
Pooja
double O.
double.
She's Pooja with a double O, and I'm Pooja with a PU. Usually people are POOJA. So Pooja ji writes, irrespective of the laws and of course the constitution interpretation of even good conscience is being twisted. The law and legal action as we see is biased towards women. I cannot say no to that. False cases of DV have no repercussions for the women. Only the matrimonial home and family suffers in society and by the police. What can be done to change this bias and mindset of the judiciary? How do we save this new generation of victimized men and their families? Well, you don't have to do it. Supreme Court has already done the needful. I remember when I started practice, and I would have also done it, I will not say no to it, and I plead guilty to it. We used to get men arrested on Friday. Just the girl used to go to the police station, instantly FIRs were done, and the man was picked up on Friday, released on Monday, and 2 days we had to negotiate the divorce. How much is he going to pay? Now, with evolving of time and Supreme Court realizing that how these laws have been misused by girls, only to put pressure on the family. The whole family used to be arrested. Mother, father of the boy, even married sisters, their husbands. I mean, nobody was spared. First and foremost, now the parameters have been that we cannot arrest any of the family members. If a woman files a complaint prior to 2 months, no FIR registered, and modes and means of counseling and conciliation are done. Even if an FIR registered, still until there is any medical legal case and a threat to life or a wife dies in the matrimonial home, nobody can arrest the boy and his family. I think latest is Twisha's case where you've seen all this happen. And well, the mother-in-law, despite being a judicial officer, her bail was granted, but then it has been cancelled. So see, we have to understand, हिंदी में कहते हैं ना गेहूं के साथ घुन पिसता है. So the laws were framed for those women who were not educated, who did not know how to take care of their life, or who were not financially independent. They are more misused by people, and there are no two ways about it. But then law has taken care of how to handle, the boy's family. Immediately, no case can be registered, no arrest can be made, and then even when the boy or his family goes for anticipatory bail, like I can speak for Delhi High Court for sure, they are granted interim relief and sent for mediation, because the courts also realize that once the woman has gone into the police station, filed 498-406, that means there is no going back to that home. So it is only a question of settlement, which is financial in nature. The way we can stop the men from being victimized, Pooja ji, is that come for mediation, come for pre-litigation mediation. The minute a wife leaves the house, immediately inform the local police station that she has left, by her choice, and she's in good health and she's gone to this place, her parents' place. Then secondly, immediately move for pre-litigation mediation. The minute you do that, the courts also understand that you have taken the first step towards, resolving your dispute. So that helps the men. I hope I'm okay with the answer. You want any more examples? I can give.
Absolutely fine, ma'am. I completely understand your perspective. Initially, when I started studying law, I came to a point where I was seeing that even men's cases were being rejected by advocates कि पति की side नहीं लेनी है, wife के लिए
No,
fight
please
करनी
come
है.
to me. I will take all cases of men. Inder Singh says how to deal with unregistered adoptions with regards to inheritance can be dealt in court. Well, if it's an unregistered adoption, there is no adoption, no. There is no adoption. Law is very clear cut. So
No,
how
I had one matter where they had this particular child whom they actually they brought him up, but ultimately they did not have a registered deed, adoption deed. In the end, now he's facing this particular problem of getting his title in the property.
he's the
So-
only child
He's the only child.
and the parents have self-acquired property?
It's ancestral property. That is an issue.
Why is it an issue? The parents can take it in their name and then they can transfer it to anybody. As a right,
Yeah,
that
actually,
child
parents they expired. Now,
as a matter
Bucks-
of right, Inderji, that child cannot have any claim.
Okay. But
If
what
it's my
happened?
self-acquired property today as a woman, if I have anything, I can give it to anybody. I can give it to my neighbor. But so they want to give if their portion of ancestral property, the mother can take it. Mother can give it to anybody.
Yes, ma'am. But what happened before
Laws are
they?
there, and then there are loopholes also into the law.
Yes. So what happened here in this present case? We showed in the courts that he had the intention of staying property till the end, like after his parents died. So we are trying to make it more of a adverse possession kind of a thing. It's still going on.
Yeah.
So that's why.
Thank you. Anurag James, thank you. You're saying, ma'am, bigamy, it's not called that now, is still criminal under Section 2 adultery removed. Bigamy is that during the subsistence of a marriage, you get married again. Adultery can be with anybody without even marriage. So there is a bifurcation. Bigamy under the Hindu Marriage Act is an offense, but under the Muslim law, again, for marriages are permissible, but then you have to seek permission, which people do not say. My question is about the restitution of conjugal rights. Does it cover sexual intercourse? If yes, then what about bodily autonomy? Forgive my spelling mistakes. Mr. Anurag James, that's a very good question. It's a redundant and I think a very oppressive Section 9 under the Hindu Marriage Act, which is restitution of conjugal rights. And of course, conjugal rights are physical, relations between a couple. What about bodily autonomy? Well, the courts have to see that. Of course, it is, I always say that it is just a section which is used, by parties to give away as just a challenge to the divorce that I have sought restitution of conjugal rights. Where is the need to go to the court for restitution of conjugal rights? I've seen parties when I started, I'm talking of 25 years ago or 26 years ago. A husband filed a case of restitution of conjugal rights, got the order from the court, took the girl outside. These are like district court Tisazari. At the gate, left the wife and went away. Only so that all the other cases are put in abeyance and they are stopped. And when the girl came back, then the court said, what can we do? We have given you the right. Now you go refile all those cases. So this particular Section 9 is a pathetic and an atrocious section which should go away. Yes, bodily autonomy is very important, but law is law, and I have no, if I had my way in the morning, I'll strike it out. It is totally fundamental right. I don't want this person, and the court is compelling me to be with this person. So are we good, Mr. James?
Ma'am, I have a question regarding the section 144 of the BNSS.
Yes,
Can parents take a maintenance from
yes. If she's the only child, and even if she's not the only child, but they can seek maintenance for take care of the parents.
Ma'am, question is for the regarding the bigamy.
Polygamy, okay?
Um, if I said as per the BNSS said if there is any bigamy, only the aggrieved party can file a case.
Yes,
Despite of if I say the bigamy is a criminal offense and the criminal offense is always against the state, why should not a state take a cognizance under the BNS in the bigamy?
sorry, your voice is cracking. I can't understand the question.
Shifra, maybe you can write down
Trans-
the question in the chat box and we'll take the question then. That will be better.
Dipali ji is written in connection with current question under discussion. Marital rapes aren't considered in the definition of rape. No, they are not. Getting married doesn't mean consent. Law needs to evolve when it comes to this particular issue. Ma'am would like to know your take on it. Well, when we talk of marital rapes, the West recognizes it, yes. But do you think our country has evolved to the extent that getting this marital rape as part of the act or as a criminal offense will help the women, or will it be against the males who are already under various laws, are already in a soup, whether it is dowry demand, cruelty, 498, 406. Now, if marital rape were also to be considered, do you think there will be multiplicity of litigation? Are as a nation to yes, it should be there, because both of them are irrespective. Just because you are married to a person does not give him a right over your body. But then yet again, the flip side is that it will be misused to the hilt. So maybe for a few years more, we need to just let it be, park it on the side. Once the society evolves more, once we are all ready, because when we are talking of the cosmopolitan cities. I say mediation has really paved way. No, only in the cosmopolitan city, and that too. Delhi is doing very well. Bombay is not. Calcutta refuses. West Bengal, it's very low. We've gone in for trainings, we've tried our best. But Delhi has an excellent record. Supreme Court has an excellent record of mediation. But has it gone to the grassroots levels? Has it gone where it should be? No, it has not. Likewise, this law can only come into play once literacy is propounded everywhere. And when I say literacy, it is not just legal literacy, it is about awareness. Still, our country suffers from illiteracy. Like, illiteracy is the biggest stumbling block, in the growth of any nation. Our nation has evolved. Yes, there has been a progress. The time when everybody is literate to understand, it's very easy to get an FIR registered. But the implications in the court, I always say, even for matrimonial cases, as a mediator, I feel very upset at times, because the kinds of allegations which a boy's family suffers, and then you sit across on the table and you come to a settlement on the financials. That means all those allegations mean nothing. Why you cannot continue with that case? You should. then if you feel so strongly about the case, then you should fight it out. But no, people settle it. Then where is the need to write all those things against a man and his family? World over, no in-laws are ever part and parcel of a matrimonial dispute. It's only between a couple and their assets. They have a prenup over there. Prenup takes care of everything. Here in India, prenuptials are not even anywhere in the picture. If prenup was there, if irretrievable breakdown of marriage were there, the laws which irretrievable breakdown of marriage is there, but only at the stage of Supreme Court. You have to file a 142. Just say that the couple has been staying separately since so many years, so irretrievable breakdown of marriage, and you can get the divorce that you want to. But now even the High Court doesn't have that power today. Forget about the district courts, which is the first court where the parties go for divorce. Okay, Rohit Tiwari ji is saying, ma'am, if you can advise on the case wherein if wives, brothers, and family harassing husband's parents, can a husband demand a divorce? It depends on what kind of harassment is there and what the husband is feeling. Who's stopping him from filing for divorce on the grounds of cruelty? Nobody. You can come to the court for mediation and say that I want divorce because my mother is being harassed and my parents cannot handle this harassment. What parameters court see for granting maintenance? There is this Rajneesh versus Neha's judgment in Supreme Court, wherein there are parameters and guidelines explained for income affidavit of both the husband as well as the wife. So based on that, the maintenance is given, whether it's interim or final. It's based on your income affidavit, which takes care of all your assets, your whatever you own, your credit cards, your FDs, everything. So you just have a look at that judgment and it will help you to know what are the parameters for maintenance. Mohammed Shifranji, regarding bigamy, BNSS said only aggrieved party can file a case, whereas it is a criminal offense and criminal offense. So who is the aggrieved party in your view, Shifranji? Who is the aggrieved party? Aggrieved party can also be the father of the girl, brother of the girl. I am aggrieved because my sister is suffering. My daughter is suffering. I'm aggrieved. Along with of course, the daughter first has to agree. Supposing the father and the brother want to file a case and the daughter or the sister says, who are you? I'm okay with my husband. Let him marry. You can't do anything. She is the first person who has suffered. It's like a rape case cannot be filed by anybody else. It's the girl who has undergone that rape. The others are periphery. They take her, they are with her likewise. See, it is a criminal offense, but yet again, the state will come into play only after she makes a complaint. All matters under the BNS and BNSS are ABC, state versus ABC. But how the state comes into trigger is that first the aggrieved person goes and makes a complaint now. If there is a theft in your home, can somebody else file a case of theft? You will only have to go, no, you are the aggrieved party. The criminal cases are very clear. A criminal offense cannot be filed by any and everybody. If a crime is committed, forget the murder, which is like in the view of somebody, then that person can say, okay, my husband or my wife or XYZ. There has to be some complainant. So who is a aggrieved party? Here the aggrieved party is who? The wife. She has suffered. In the case of rape, who is the aggrieved party? The woman who has suffered. So her name is written as Miss X or Miss A. Is it possible to form a private mediation institute, and how can it will get recognition? See, the MCI is not into place as of now. The Mediation Council of India, under the Mediation Act, which is now into place, not many of the sections have been notified, but sooner or later we are hopeful they will be. Once the mediation in MCI comes into place, if you have an institute, you get it registered. Once you get it registered, then you can form a private mediation institute. There are mushrooming institutes everywhere in India, but then they're not legally okay. And each to his own. I do not participate in those. But yes, there are few who are recognized institutes. I'm part and parcel of, I've been Madhyam International Institute of Conflict Resolution. There, the parties choose conciliation. It's not mediation. It is conciliation, which is done under Section 73 of the Arbitration and Conciliation Act. So conciliation is like an decree. It's a award, which is a settlement decree, and the parties can get it executed. Once the Mediation Act and all the sections come into place, then Section 73 of the Arbitration and Conciliation Act will go, and thereafter it will be governed by the Mediation Act. So Mediation Act 2023 is an act, and all the sections are very much written, but all of them have not been notified. They will be notified once, hopefully soon, we see the Mediation Council of India coming into place. Mohammed Shifranji, if anyone doing wrong, then state will not take action. So the country is governed by law, ma'am. Rule of law or rule of man. Shifranji, we can go on, an academic discussion. The law is there. The aggrieved person can go. Why will the aggrieved person not take action? I ask you. Why do you want somebody else to take action on her behalf? What is your answer to that? If that lady has suffered a wrong, then why can't she go? Please tell me. What stops her?
Shifran, you can turn on your mic and answer as well.
There is, as I said, if there is somebody who's, maybe there is a store and there is a dacoity taking place, all you can do is call 100 to help that person. Can you be the aggrieved party for that person in whose shop openly a dacoity, a robbery or theft has taken place? No, the shopkeeper will have to be the aggrieved party. You can only call 100 and inform that yes, there is a robbery happening, there is a theft happening, there is a dacoity happening. Can you step into the shoes of the aggrieved party, Shifranji?
Ma'am, I have a clear question regarding the bigamy.
No, answer my question first. I will answer your question.
Oh, okay.
Can you
Yes,
step
yes.
into the shoes of the aggrieved party in whose shop there is either a theft or a robbery or a dacoity? You see it happening. All you can do is call up 100 and let the police take action. But can you be the complainant? Can you be the aggrieved party? Even if it is a wrong which has happened in the country, a state, can you be the complainant, please? Or who will be the aggrieved party there?
The criminal case is always against the state.
Sir, I'm asking
if
you simple question. Can you be the aggrieved party there?
I will not be an aggrieved party, but
अगर आप किसी दुकान में देख रहे हैं चोरी हो रही है, किसी के घर में डकैती हो रही है, तो आप सिर्फ 100 नंबर फोन कर सकते हैं ना, पर वो घर के लोग या दुकानदार ही तो बनेगा ना एग्रीड पार्टी जिसके खिलाफ गलत हुआ है. केस तो स्टेट का ही होगा. तो फिर आप बताइए, इस केस में वाइफ के अगेंस्ट जब गलत है तो वही तो एग्रीड पार्टी है.
yes, ma'am, wife is a aggrieved party. But whereas we talk about the marriage, okay, marriage is not only limited to the individual. The marriage in India, the marriage is limited to the society.
No, sorry. It is between two people. Society is not getting married. That is the mindset of the people. It is between two people. It is not
Okay.
the whole society is not getting married. How is society involved in two people's relationship? They are in the periphery. That's what I'm saying. बाहर के सर्कल में ना, बाहर के सर्कल में पड़ोसी थोड़ी कहेंगे कि आपके साथ गलत हो रहा है. वो लड़की या लड़का कहेगा ना मेरे साथ गलत हो रहा है, जो रिश्ते में है. Yes, Dhruv ji.
Yes, ma'am. So I guess if we have any more questions, we can answer.
No,
Or else we
there
can
are
end
none.
this.
There are none over here.
Okay. So let's then end the session for today. Thank you, ma'am, for taking up this wonderful session. It was
I hope
genuinely
I
very.
was able to answer whatever were the queries and whatever were the.
Ma'am, you did a fabulous job. All the students have asked so many questions. This was one of the sessions where we have answered so many questions. So it was a
No,
wonderful
it's
session.
right, if I'm just giving a lecture or showing you PPTs, it doesn't help you people. You must
Right.
practical questions and queries like Mohammed Shifranji has.
Right.
That why state is not coming into the shoes of the wife. In a matrimonial case, can the state come into? Yes, they come into place where 498, 406 offenses there. Bigamy has to be proved. No, it is very easy to make an allegation. Supposing the other wife has not undergone the Saptapadi and they're living together and they even have a child, it won't be a marriage. So where is the bigamy? It is adultery. If it is adultery, then it is not a criminal offense anymore. Then it is only a ground for divorce. So laws have to be interpreted very carefully. And you as future generation lawyers have to take care of that. Little knowledge is a dangerous thing. You need to understand the implications of what you are getting into and how to handle it. Okay?
Yes,
And
ma'am.
thank you so much,
Thank
Dhruv,
you so
for
much,
this.
ma'am.
It was very
Yes.
good session for me too. I enjoyed.
Yes. Thank you, ma'am. And thank you to all the students for joining this session on a Sunday night. And we are very grateful to all
Do
of you.
something. Let everybody have the camera on. Click a picture and send it to me.
Yes. Is it if it will be great if everyone can just turn on your cameras once? I'll turn my own as well. Just. Okay. So, hi guys. Everyone can just turn on their camera. Okay. Perfect. Thank you, guys. Thank you, ma'am, once again.
All right. Thank you. Taking leave. Bye bye. Bye, Pooja. Namesake.